In the OR prep room, I heard the surgeon tell his resident, "Don't mention the nerve damage. Just call it normal recovery." I was supposed to be unconscious in the recovery area after my rotator cuff surgery, but the anesthesia was wearing off faster than expected, and I could hear everything through the thin curtain separating my bed from the surgical team station. My surgery had been scheduled for 90 minutes but had gone nearly 4 hours, and I'd been vaguely aware of tension and urgent voices during the procedure before they'd increased my sedation. Now Dr. Wallace was talking to his surgical resident about complications that had occurred during my operation. Through my half-closed eyes, I could see their shadows moving behind the curtain as Dr. Wallace explained in a low voice that he'd accidentally severed the axillary nerve while repairing my shoulder. The resident, a younger man named Dr. Kim, sounded shocked as he asked about the implications. Dr. Wallace said the nerve damage would likely result in permanent weakness and limited mobility in my shoulder and arm, potentially affecting my ability to work as a contractor. Dr. Kim asked if they should inform me immediately and document the complication in my surgical report. Dr. Wallace's response made my blood run cold. He said they would tell me I had normal post-surgical inflammation and that any weakness or numbness I experienced was part of the standard healing process. He instructed Dr. Kim to chart it as successful surgery with no complications, explaining that nerve damage complaints often resolved themselves over time and there was no point alarming me or creating documentation that could be used in a lawsuit. Dr. Kim protested, saying this was a major complication that required immediate disclosure and potentially corrective surgery or nerve grafting. Dr. Wallace cut him off and said corrective procedures rarely worked for axillary nerve injuries and would only cost me more money while exposing the hospital to liability. He told Dr. Kim that in 6 months, when the weakness hadn't improved, they could order an MRI and act surprised by the findings, claiming it must have been a delayed complication from the original injury rather than surgical error. The conversation became even more disturbing when Dr. Wallace revealed this wasn't his first time handling complications this way. He mentioned a patient from 8 months ago who'd had a similar nerve injury during knee surgery that he'd attributed to pre-existing arthritis rather than surgical damage. He said the patient had eventually settled their malpractice claim for a small amount because the delayed disclosure made it impossible to prove when the damage actually occurred. Dr. Kim sounded horrified as he realized his mentor was describing a pattern of deliberately concealing surgical errors and manipulating medical records to avoid accountability. Dr. Wallace told him this was just part of practicing defensive medicine in a litigious society, that documenting every minor complication would make them uninsurable and destroy their careers. He said Dr. Kim needed to decide right now whether he wanted to be a successful surgeon or an honest failure. I couldn't stay quiet any longer and spoke up despite my groggy state, making both doctors freeze. "I heard everything," I said, my voice slurred but clear enough. "You cut a nerve and you're planning to lie about it." Dr. Wallace immediately came around the curtain with a forced smile, telling me I was confused from the anesthesia and needed to rest. But I'd heard enough to know exactly what had happened, and I wasn't about to let them cover up damage that would affect the rest of my life. I demanded to speak with the hospital administrator and patient advocate immediately, explaining in detail what I'd overheard about the nerve damage, the cover-up plan, and Dr. Wallace's admission about doing this to previous patients. Dr. Bisi Kim stood frozen by the surgical station, clearly torn between protecting his career and doing what was right. Within 2 hours, my room was filled with hospital administrators, risk management staff, and patient safety officers conducting an emergency investigation into my surgery and Dr. Wallace's surgical history. Dr. Kim ultimately chose to cooperate fully, providing detailed testimony about the conversation and the nerve injury he'd witnessed during my procedure. An immediate MRI confirmed complete severing of my axillary nerve, requiring emergency reconstructive surgery by a different surgical team to attempt repair before permanent damage set in. The investigation uncovered that Dr. Wallace had been concealing surgical complications for years, including the knee surgery patient he'd mentioned, and at least 5 other cases where he'd attributed his mistakes to pre-existing conditions or delayed complications. Hospital records showed a pattern of patients complaining about unexpected weakness or numbness after his surgeries, only to be told it was normal healing that would improve with physical therapy. Dr. Wallace's medical license was permanently revoked, and he faced criminal charges for fraud and intentional harm to patients.